are 5 strategies that you can start using right away to increase your resiliency muscle. Number 1, acknowledge. And by that, I mean acknowledge when you're going through a rough time. Saying things like, this is hard. I'm struggling. I'm having a really hard day today. This is feeling overwhelming. This is feeling too much. Any way that you want to acknowledge what is happening right now in your life. What is the experience that you're going through? And to do so in a factual way. So for example, saying things like, at this moment, I'm having a migraine, or I have a lot of tasks on my to-do list that I need to accomplish by this date, this time. The important thing to keep in mind is to do so, as I said, factually, without thoughts and judgments. Everybody's giving me too many tasks. That's more of a judgment. I have 10 things to do on my to-do list. That's factual. So noticing the difference. Right now, I'm noticing that my heart is racing. Right? That's factual. I'm experiencing feelings of anger. I'm experiencing feelings of resentment. Right now, I'm experiencing feelings of anxiety because tomorrow I have a presentation to give. It's still factual, but it might be a bit more specific than just saying, I have a presentation tomorrow, right? Or I'm feeling anxiety. So that's the first strategy, is to acknowledge what's here. And the second strategy is connected to the first, and it's to allow. So now that you've acknowledged what's here, we're going to just let it be. We're not going to do anything with it. We're going to allow it to be here. Now, this one might feel a little harder to do because a lot of the times when something is uncomfortable, we just want to shove it away, push it down, pretend that it's not happening. And now I'm inviting you to do the opposite and to allow, to sit beside it, to let it be here. And by allowing, we let it run its course. We don't push it away. We're learning how to ride the waves. And by riding the waves, we're strengthening our resiliency muscle because we're learning how to be with the ups and the downs. So it's strengthening that muscle. Instead of resisting what's here, instead of pushing it away, we're going to turn towards it. We do this through meditating. I have a welcome mat meditation that I teach my students, and it helps them learn how to sit and to welcome their different thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they show up. And you'll soon discover that being with what's here, rather than fighting it, which, as I said, we tend to want to do, we want to fight, we want to push it away, but instead, by allowing it to be here, it will move on quicker. And isn't that what we want? Don't we want things, especially hard things, to move on quicker? And by allowing, we let that happen. And a way you can think of allowing is with going into a hot tub, right? The water is really hot. When you first step in, it could feel overwhelming and overbearing. This is too much. This is way too hot. I can't sit in this hot tub for long. This is too hot. And too hot is a judgment, right? And we're learning to not use some of those, but by continuing to sit in this hot tub, even noticing how it feels in our body, I'm noticing the thought that this feels too hot. I had to walk in slowly, inch by inch, got up to my calves, and then I was able to get in deeper, and then I was able to sit, and then I was able to put my arms in, right? That's a factual way of describing being in the hot tub. But the thing is, the longer you sit in the hot tub, the more you get used to the water, and then you don't even notice the heat of it anymore. And that's an analogy of allowing and letting it be. I'm feeling really anxious today. I'm going to allow myself to feel anxious. And it might feel like stepping into that hot tub where I can only do it for a couple of seconds. And maybe I need to get out. And then maybe I can come back. And this time, my feet are used to the heat of the water, so I can maybe step in a little deeper. And that's allowing. We're going to sit with what's here. We're going to see how long we can be with it. You're always able to move on if it starts to feel like it's too much. But noticing what thoughts are showing up and judgments. If it's a judgment of like, I can't do this, this is too much for me, noticing that and allowing, again, acknowledging and allowing what thoughts are showing up and allow them to be here. The thing is, when we don't grasp onto our thoughts and continue to think about them and to feed those thoughts, they tend to move on pretty quickly. What keeps them around is by feeding them with more and more thoughts. So this feels too hot. This is too much. I can't do this. I should get out. This is way too hot, right? I'm feeding it. And not only am I feeding the thought, I'm feeding the emotion underneath the thought. But by allowing, I allow that I'm feeling anxious. This is feeling really uncomfortable for me. There's a difference between acknowledging and allowing versus pushing away and resisting. There's so much more compassion when we allow and acknowledge versus push away and resist. And all of this strengthens your resiliency muscle. The more times you practice this, the more times you do it, the better equipped you are at strengthening your resiliency muscle. The third strategy is one I kind of just touched on, and it's meditating. Because when we meditate, we start to pay attention and we start to notice, what are we thinking? How am I feeling? What's showing up for me right now in this moment? So we meditate, and we can do that in a few ways. One way, one easy way that we can all start to do more of is a simple breath practice, being with this breath, because this breath is here in this moment. It's not in the future, thinking about what else could happen, what ifs, right? It's here now in this moment. It's also not in the past, maybe remembering something difficult that you are going through or have been through in the past. With this breath, we are only here and now in this moment. And we can do that by just breathing together and doing it right now. A little bit of touch often helps, like I said before, by bringing in some of that compassion. You could even give yourself a little hug. This is a meditation practice. This, right now, being with the breath is meditative, it's comforting, it's supportive, and it's increasing your resiliency muscle because you are now showing up for yourself in this moment by being with your body in this way with this breath. And you can do this anywhere, right? You don't need to use the touch if that feels too uncomfortable, especially if you're around other people, but just breathing. In moments where things are tough, we tend to hold our breath a little bit more. We tend to breathe a little more shallower. Today, we're going to breathe. And one practice that I teach is called the box practice, and it's breathing in for 5, holding for 5, out for 5, hold for 5. So you're making a little box. That's an easy way to think about it. You can always adjust the length of time. I like to breathe in for 5, as I said, hold for 5, but you can breathe in for 8, hold for 4, out for maybe longer, up to 10, and hold for another 4. You can adjust it as you need. We're going to breathe in for 5 together, hold, out, and hold. And that's the box practice. That's one meditative practice that you can start doing right now whenever you notice that things are feeling a little tough. And that's one practice that you can start doing right away whenever you notice that things are tough. And that is the thing about life. There's always going to be something. And the more we sit, we allow, we acknowledge, and we breathe, the better equipped we will become at strengthening our resiliency muscles so that we can move our way through what's here. And the fourth strategy is to find people who can be a support to you. And that can be a therapist if that feels possible for you. It could be a friend, a family member. It could even be a pet if you have one. I mean, I talk to my dog often when I'm having a hard day, and I explain to her, it feels supportive to talk to her because she likes to give me kisses and cuddle into my lap. Just acknowledging again to a supportive person or pet, sharing what you're going through, how you feel about it. You can, by doing so, by saying it out loud, it takes a lot of the pressure off, because we're so used to having to push our way through and to feel like we can do all the things. But by seeking out support from someone, by saying at the acknowledgement that we did at the beginning, I'm having a hard time, by saying it to someone, it takes the pressure off. You feel a lot more peace and ease because you've reached out to someone for support. And you can say to them, hey, I just need to vent for a few minutes. I'm having a rough day. Can I talk to you about it? That's a great way of doing it. It can feel hard to do because our thoughts, our judgments, and our resistance to asking for support can tell us things that aren't necessarily true. Things like, I don't want to be a burden to other people. They're going to resent me if I ask for help. Everybody's too busy. No one can help me. I mean, depends on what you're asking for. But if you just say, if you call someone or say, hey, can we have a phone chat? Today's been a rough day. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. And you often see on Twitter, people post, I'm having a rough day. Send me all your dog photos. I've done the same thing to my friends. Hey, my one friend has 2 little kids. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, today's a rough day. Can you send me pictures of your kids being cute? And she will. It doesn't have to be complicated. And if seeking support from other people isn't a strategy that you feel comfortable using, maybe you feel like you're a bit more of an introvert, then strategy number 5 is probably for you. And that strategy is to distract yourself with activities. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because I talked about not resisting or pushing things away. And we're not distracting ourselves in a way to resist what we're feeling. We're distracting ourselves to open this moment up to feeling something different. There's a reason why there was a lot of baking going on at the start of lockdown. I mean, raise your hand if you made some sourdough bread. I definitely baked a lot during the last couple of years because baking is a way of distracting yourself on purpose. It takes your mind away from the situation you're dealing with, and it gives it something to focus on. Another way of distracting yourself is by watching a movie. Now, for watching a movie, listening to music, reading a book, there's one little caveat that I want to attach to that. You want to choose a movie, book, music, podcast, whatever, that will bring up a different emotion than the one that you're experiencing. So if the challenging situation that you're going through is bringing up a lot of anxiety, now's not the time to put on a horror movie. But a romantic comedy might be a great idea. Or one of those tear jerkers. I have a whole list of movies that I know will make me cry like a little baby. And that might be one that I want to put on when I'm feeling anxious because now I'm experiencing a different emotion. It can be tough to go from feeling sad to feeling happy. So choosing a comedy might not feel helpful if you're especially down, if you're feeling depressed and sad, really sad about what you're going through. That might not feel possible. So that might be the time to put on the horror movie because it might be a little easier to shift into feeling scared than to move straight into happy. And And it's not about carrying this emotion for the rest of the day and resisting what we're feeling and pushing it down and pretending it's not here. It's a break, it's a respite, it's a moment or two. And you might not even be able to have the break for the duration of the movie, but every moment that you can be with a different feeling is good, right? That little bit of a break. This feels good. This feels accessible. And so, those are 5 strategies that you can use today to strengthen your resiliency muscle.